The gavel had not yet fallen, but the room already felt like a battlefield. Chicago's divorce court buzzed with reporters, their recorders clicking, questions whispering like static against marble walls. At the center, Valeria Quinn leaned back in her chair, flawless in a cream Chanel suit, and signed the divorce papers with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. Her voice sliced through the silence. "Marcus, you will never touch a single cent of my 24 million. A collective gasp rippled. Voices rose, hungry for scandal. As her pen carved the final stroke, the moment split into 3 beats. Ink scratching across paper, the staccato tick of press recorders, and the small, shaken breath of 6-year-old Lila as her mother laughed at her father's ruin. Then, a rustle. Judge Miriam Cho lifted a thick envelope from the bench, her tone unreadable. The title on it was plain: Prenuptial Agreement. For a fleeting second, one line stood out beneath the legal jargon. All assets acquired during marriage shall be considered marital property. Valeria's confident grin thinned. Doubt flickered at the edges. Listeners in states like Illinois or New York, lottery winnings during marriage are usually treated as marital property. A common mistake? Believing a ticket belongs only to the buyer. The instant lesson? Never laugh until you've read the fine print. The true hook isn't the paper itself. It's how arrogance freezes into fear in 3 heartbeats. Tell me, where are you right now as you hear this? Driving home, lying in bed, or listening on your lunch break? Drop it in the comments and make sure you're subscribed, because what comes next will shake your idea of love, money, and revenge. Chicago never really sleeps, but Marcus Hale wakes even earlier. At 4 a.m., his alarm cracks the silence of their modest South Side apartment. He slips out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Valeria. The floor creaks under his steel-toed boots as he heads for the kitchen. There, under the glow of a single lamp, he prepares his ritual. Black coffee in a dented thermos, and a sticky note for his daughter. "Have a great day at school, Peanut. Daddy loves you. It isn't grand, but it's steady." That note, folded beside Lila's cereal bowl, is her morning treasure. Down the hallway, Valeria Quinn is already awake too, but in a different world. She stretches into a perfect yoga pose, scrolling through glowing screens, Instagram filters, group chats from the Lakeshore Club, plans for luncheons and weekend galas. She is Edward Quinn's daughter, raised in the currency of appearances where reputation is capital. For her, marriage was supposed to be a ladder up, not a step down. By 6 a.m., Marcus is at the job site. The skyline looms, iron beams jutting into gray sky like ribs of an unfinished giant. Marcus climbs with the assurance of a man who trusts steel more than people. Every rivet he drives in feels like a prayer for stability. Among the crew, he earns quiet respect, not by shouting, but by working harder than anyone. His palms are split with calluses. His shoulders carry the weight of both girders and family. By 6 p.m., he is back home. Dust and sweat cling to him like armor, but his first act is always the same: scoop Lila into his arms. Her laughter is the sound that redeems the day. She shows him crayon drawings, princesses, castles, a family of 3, but even here, shadows creep in. As Marcus sets the table, Valeria glances up from her phone. "Did you really come home looking like that? You smell like concrete and iron," she says it lightly, but the words cut. It's a micro-conflict, a drip of acid on stone. Later, the mail arrives. Another invoice. Club membership fees higher than his monthly paycheck. Marcus folds the paper, sighs. When he suggests putting more into Lila's education fund, Valeria waves him off. "Relax, Dad will help if we need it." But Marcus knows. Help from her father always carries a hook. Night falls. Valeria sets up a live stream for her charity chic event. rehearsed smiles aimed at strangers. Marcus retreats to Lila's room, book in hand. She curls against him as he reads about knights and bridges, stories of strength and sacrifice. And when she drifts off, he performs his own ritual, taking his hard hat from the bag, dusting it off, setting it neatly on the dresser. For Marcus, it's more than gear. It's a symbol, the weight he carries, the pride in his labor, the vow he renews silently every night. Here's the truth. In cities like Chicago, marriages between working-class grit and legacy wealth don't usually shatter over money alone. They shatter over values. Respect, or the lack of it, builds or breaks the foundation. A common mistake? Believing financial stability equals marital stability. The real investment is daily respect, not dollars. And Marcus's ritual with the hard hat, his quiet act of pride, speaks louder than any curated Instagram story ever could. But destiny doesn't wait for rituals. On one ordinary Thursday morning, a lottery ticket waits on the counter, ready to detonate everything. Destiny rarely makes an announcement. Sometimes it hides inside the smallest things. For Marcus and Valeria, it arrived on a thin strip of paper from a corner deli, one gray October morning. Valeria bought the ticket on impulse, scratching the silver coating with her manicured nail while the morning talk show droned in the background. One number matched, then a second. Her pulse quickened. By the fifth, her breath caught. Her scream shattered the quiet, echoing down the hallway of their apartment. Within an hour, neighbors were knocking. By evening, the block had transformed into a street party. Champagne flowed, sparklers hissed, music thumped from car speakers. Reporters showed up, cameras pointed, asking for quotes. And there was Valeria, glowing at the center, holding the ticket high as if she'd been crowned queen. Marcus came rushing home from work, boots still caked with steel dust. For one brief moment, joy united them. He scooped up Lila, who squealed, "We're rich, Daddy!" "Mommy says we can buy a castle." The crowd cheered, but beneath the noise lay a truth Marcus couldn't yet see. Castles, like marriages, only stand if the foundation is strong. Weeks passed, and hairline cracks began to show. Valeria's language shifted. Our money became my money. Her calendar filled with lunches and meetings arranged by new advisors from the Lakeshore Club. Names Marcus had never heard before, people who wore wealth like perfume. And then there was Derek Vaughn, a tennis coach turned lifestyle investor, smooth voice, polished smile, always too close to Valeria's laughter. Messages appeared on her phone, then disappeared, auto-deleted before Marcus could read them. At dinner, while Marcus spoke about setting aside money for Lila's education, Valeria snapped, "Don't worry. It's my money." I'll decide. That word, my, hit Marcus harder than any punch. In cases across the US, new millionaires often draw in two predators, scammers and so-called wealthy friends. The biggest mistake? Going public without protection. No trust, no LLC, no CPA consultation. It's like starting construction on a skyscraper without a blueprint. Money doesn't change who you are. It magnifies it. And as the months turned, Valeria's true nature surfaced. The detail Marcus missed, Lila felt. Children notice storms long before adults admit the thunder. Her drawings shifted, castles fading, replaced by lonely stick figures. She knew before anyone else. The foundation was breaking. And soon, one envelope left on the kitchen table would make the fracture undeniable. Money shifts conversations before it shifts lives. 2 weeks after the lottery win, Marcus sat across from Valeria at their dining table, a stack of handwritten notes in his calloused hands. He spoke as if laying down blueprints for their future. A college fund for Lila. Pay off debts. Maybe a modest home we can truly call ours. Valeria didn't look up from her phone. That sounds boring. We should be searching for lakefront condos, something that shows who we are now. Marcus swallowed hard. Who we are hasn't changed, Val. Only the numbers in the bank. Her laugh was soft, but it cut like a blade. Speak for yourself. That night, Marcus found a receipt in her handbag, $3,400 at a boutique he'd never heard of. Days later, another statement came. A luxury charge equal to 2 months of his old salary. Weekends turned into excuses. Spa retreat, she texted, or lunch with friends. But her phone buzzed with unfamiliar names. Conversations ended the moment he stepped into the room. Then came the night the truth broke through. Marcus opened a credit card statement and froze. A charge at a downtown restaurant. Not unusual until he saw the line item, private room fee. Clipped to the statement was a valet slip, signed Derek Vaughn. The world tilted. Marcus's knuckles whitened around the paper. The puzzle fit together at last. The shopping bags, the secret calls, the weekends away. It was no longer suspicion. It was evidence. This is how betrayal often arrives. Not with a confession, but in fragments. A receipt, a silent charge, a name scrawled on a slip of paper. Legally, timing matters. In Illinois, a lottery ticket bought during marriage is marital property. Separation doesn't erase that unless the court decides it. A mistake too many make? Waiting too long to act, failing to preserve what matters. Metadata, receipts, threads that vanish faster than trust. Digital proof disappears quicker than love. Marcus understood, and that night, he chose silence but not surrender. No shouting, no fists, just a folder, slowly filling with copies. Every receipt, every slip, every trace. Because one day, those papers would matter more than words. The first time Marcus spoke to a lawyer, he looked less like a man seeking hope than one carrying the weight of stone. Jordan Reyes leaned across his desk, his voice lowered. Marcus, think carefully. Before the wedding, was there any paperwork? Anything your father-in-law insisted on? Marcus blinked. His memory pulled him back 8 years, to a night heavy with polished mahogany and expensive wine. The Quinn estate in Winnetka shimmered under chandeliers, a world away from the South Side apartment where Marcus had grown up. He wore his only good suit, the sleeves too long, bought with overtime pay. Valeria sat beside him, holding his hand, as Edward Quinn presided at the table, the man whose reputation could bend half the city's press. Dinner began with small talk, but the tone shifted like steel grinding against stone. Edward set down his glass, reached into a leather briefcase, and slid a thick manila folder across the table. His fountain pen followed, polished black, its gold nib catching the chandelier's glow. If you want to marry my daughter, you'll sign this. Marcus's throat tightened. What is it? A prenuptial agreement, family protection, nothing unusual. Valeria said nothing. Her silence weighed heavier than words. Marcus leafed through the dense text, his eyes blurring over terms. Separate property, marital estate, equitable distribution. Edward's tone was final. What you owned before stays yours, but anything acquired during the marriage belongs to the marriage. Marcus's cheeks burned. I don't understand all of this. Edward's smile was thin, sharp. Then trust me. It's insurance for both sides. And for our family's honor, the word honor struck Marcus like a verdict, measuring his worth against the Quinn name. Valeria looked away, eyes fixed on her glass. Marcus signed, the pen dragged heavy across the paper. He told himself he was marrying her, not her fortune. The folder vanished back into Edward's briefcase, sealed like a trap. Now, 8 years later, in Jordan's office, the memory seared fresh. Marcus's voice broke. The prenup, it said everything earned during marriage belongs to the marriage. Jordan leaned back, a slow, predatory smile rising. "Do you still have a copy?" Marcus pictured the manila envelope buried in a drawer, untouched since the wedding night. "Yes," he whispered. Jordan's eyes gleamed. "Then we have her. The very contract her father forced on you may now be her undoing." Prenups are not always shackles. Sometimes they bind both sides in ways no one anticipates, and when read aloud in court, clauses meant to protect can just as easily destroy. Marcus understood one truth. Direct confrontation would only fuel Valeria's fire, so he chose silence, but not passivity. Jordan Reyes, Marcus's childhood friend turned family lawyer, was the quiet architect behind his restraint. Where Marcus bent steel beams for a living, Jordan bent legal documents, and together they laid a trap. When Derek Vaughn began circling closer, offering exclusive investments, Marcus pretended to play along. One evening, Valeria slid a glossy folder across the dining table. "Derek's fund is the future. If we both sign, the returns will be huge." Marcus studied the papers, frowning as though lost in the jargon. "All right," he said carefully, "if you think it's smart." He reached for the pen, moving slow. But the sheet he signed wasn't Derek's proposal at all. It was the duplicate Jordan had prepared. A mirrored contract with one fatal twist. Whoever authorized the investment carried full liability. The fountain pen scratched across the page, heavy and deliberate. Valeria smiled, thinking she had bent Marcus at last. In truth, she had shackled herself. Meanwhile, invitations multiplied. The Lakeshore Club's charity gala became Valeria's stage. Marcus arrived in his worn suit, out of place among tuxedos, but steady as iron. At the champagne table, Valeria introduced Derek as her financial advisor, her hand lingering far too long on his arm. Whispers spread, cameras flashed. "Marcus," she announced loudly, "still works construction. But Derek? Derek builds futures." Laughter rippled like glass shattering. Marcus didn't flinch. He shook Derek's hand, eyes locking. "Interesting to finally meet you. I look forward to seeing how this plays out." On record, Valeria rolled her eyes, believing she'd humiliated him. But she hadn't noticed the reporter scribbling nearby, or the photographer catching every gesture. Her arrogance was no longer private. It was evidence. Viewers, step outside the story for a moment. If betrayal mixes with money, there are 3 rules you must follow. 1. Back up everything. Screenshots and copies outlast excuses. 2. Consult early. A lawyer before the explosion is stronger than one after. 3. Secure your finances. Track every account, every signature, every transfer. These are not paranoia. They are survival. Marcus left the gala without raising his voice. Instead, he delivered every article, every contract, every photo into Jordan's hands. The lawyer's eyes gleamed as he placed the growing file into a safe. "Patience, Marcus," Jordan said. "In court, silence becomes thunder." Valeria thought she had severed Marcus with one cruel signature. In reality, she had documented her own betrayal, signed, sealed, and public. The next morning, the tabloids screamed, "Heiress flaunts investor Derek Vaughn, mocks husband Marcus Hale." At home, a manila envelope waited on the kitchen table. Inside, divorce papers, her signature slashed across the page like a knife. A clipped note read only one line: "You were never in my class. Sign and disappear." Marcus stared at the words, jaw set. Then he folded the papers, carried them to Jordan's office, and placed them on the desk. Jordan tapped the folder, his eyes hardening. "This is it," he said softly. "Next stop is court." The courtroom smelled of varnished oak and sweat. Reporters filled every bench, cameras primed for scandal. The doors opened, and Valeria Quinn strode in like a queen. Edward, her father, followed close behind, silver hair gleaming, his confidence radiating like armor. They glided to the plaintiff's table with rehearsed elegance. Across the aisle, Marcus adjusted the only suit he owned. Too tight at the shoulders, but he wore it with the weight of dignity. Jordan sat beside him, steady as stone. At the front row, Lila clutched her rabbit, guardian ad litem at her side. Her eyes, wide and uncertain, were the quiet center of the storm. All rise. Judge Miriam Cho entered, robes trailing like a shadow. 20 years on the bench had taught her how to read people faster than files. One glance told her everything: arrogance on one side, patience on the other. She tapped the file. "Mrs. Quinn, you may begin." Valeria rose, her voice sharp. "Your Honor, the winnings are mine alone. I purchased the ticket. Marcus contributed nothing. He belongs nowhere near my world." Whispers stirred. Edward smirked. Judge Cho raised a hand. "I've reviewed the prenuptial agreement submitted by both parties." Valeria leaned toward her father, whispering, "We've won." But the judge's tone cut cold. "The prenup clearly states, assets acquired during the marriage are marital property. The lottery winnings fall under that category. This court rules for equitable distribution." 50-50 flashbulbs exploded. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Valeria froze, her smile shattered. Then her shock turned into a bitter laugh. 50-50? You're giving him half? She flung her arms wide, her voice echoing, "Fine. Let him have it. Take your half, Marcus. I don't care. I don't need this court. I've already moved on. Derek Vaughn's fund will triple my fortune." She yanked open her briefcase, scattering glossy contracts across the plaintiff's table. Derek's logo glared under the lights, her signature scrawled boldly on every page. The gallery erupted. Reporters scribbled, cameras zoomed. Edward's smirk faltered. Jordan stood slowly, his tone surgical. "Your Honor, may I respond?" He picked up the contracts, sliding them under the projector. Valeria's signature glowed on the screen. "These documents carry a liability clause. Whoever signs assumes full personal responsibility." He paused, then sharpened the blade. "And several of these so-called funds are already under federal investigation for securities fraud." The room gasped. Reporters surged forward. Edward's jaw clenched, his face collapsing as the trap revealed itself. Valeria's hands shook violently. "No," Derek said. "He promised." She clawed at the contracts, desperate to shred them, but the ink was permanent. Judge Cho's voice sliced through the noise. "Let the record show. Mrs. Quinn has admitted to binding financial contracts without marital consent, endangering marital assets. These matters will be addressed in separate hearings." Valeria staggered, mascara streaking. She turned on Marcus, madness in her eyes. "Take it all! The money, the debts, the child. I don't care anymore. I want freedom, even if it ruins me." The words detonated across the courtroom. Every camera swiveled to Lila. Her rabbit slipped from her hands as her wide eyes filled with confusion. The guardian ad litem wrote furiously, every word sealing Valeria's fate. Judge Cho's gavel thundered, "Let the record show. Mrs. Quinn has voluntarily relinquished custodial claim in open court. Primary custody is awarded to Mr. Hale." The gallery rippled, shock, pity, awe. Valeria collapsed into her chair, surrounded by papers, debts, and silence. Edward Quinn sat frozen, realizing the prenup he had once crafted as armor had become a blade, cutting his own daughter down. Marcus bent to his knees as Lila ran to him, wrapping her arms around his neck. No words, just the rhythm of her breath. 2-3 steady beats against his chest. Sometimes silence is the loudest verdict, and in that silence, Valeria Quinn's empire turned to dust. Marcus Hale signed the check for $12 million. No fireworks, no champagne. Instead, he opened a trust fund for Lila's education, hired a fiduciary advisor, and registered Hale Steelworks LLC. He bought equipment, rehired laid-off iron workers, and set up shop on the south side where he had grown up. 18 months later, his crews secured a contract to rebuild a rusting steel bridge across the Calumet River. Reporters hailed it as a blue-collar renaissance. Marcus never boasted. He simply showed up, helmet in hand, beside the men who had once sweated beside him. Meanwhile, Valeria Quinn burned through her half like kerosene on a fire. A penthouse overlooking the lake, designer wardrobes, angel investments, whispered by Derek Vaughn, each one a scam that drained her faster. By year 3, her social circle evaporated. Invitations dried up. Derek vanished with the last of her cash. Valeria was left with debt, loneliness, and silence where applause used to be. Edward Quinn fared no better. His PR empire bled clients. Rumors of mismanagement and unpaid debts surfaced. What had once been a dynasty now teetered on bankruptcy. One gray afternoon, a black sedan pulled up outside Marcus's new headquarters. Edward Quinn stepped out, smaller than Marcus remembered, clutching a folder of proposals. Valeria trailed behind, her once radiant face hollowed by regret. In Marcus's office, lined with blueprints, steel models, and photos of Lila, Edward laid his pitch on the desk. "Marcus, your projects are admired. If Hale Steelworks partnered with Quinn Communications, we could both recover. Hundreds of jobs are at stake," Valeria's voice cracked, almost pleading. "Marcus, I was wrong. Please, give us a chance to make this right." Marcus studied them for a long moment. Then he closed the folder gently and slid it back across the desk. "When I had nothing," he said quietly, "I still showed up for family. For Lila, even for you. You threw me away. That was your choice." He rose, walked to the door, and opened it. Not with anger, but with calm finality. "My work now is for the future. For people who believe in building, not destroying." Edward stiffened, his pride collapsing. Valeria's eyes filled with tears. Marcus's tone softened, almost kind. "If your employees need help, there's a hotline for displaced workers. And I've just funded a scholarship for young tradesmen, named after my mother. That's where second chances belong." The Quinns stood motionless. No screaming, no bargaining, just silence as Marcus held the door. They stepped out, diminished, into the hallway. Marcus closed the door softly. The latch clicked, a sound sharper than any slammed gavel. On his desk, a photo of Lila smiled back at him. Real power, Marcus knew, was not in revenge that destroys, but in the strength to choose, and the discipline to close the door. Marcus and Lila stood in his new office. On the wall hung a small steel bridge model Lila had built in her STEM class. It was more than a school project. It was a symbol of what they had rebuilt from ruin. Outside, Valeria paused before the glass tower of Hale Steelworks. No flashbulbs, no entourage, just a woman standing in silence, watching the life she once scorned. For the first time, she said nothing. And then, she turned and disappeared into the crowd. Money is a test. Character is the house it either builds or burns down. Justice doesn't always wear robes. Sometimes it wears steel-toed boots, yet carries a soft heart for a child. Some doors close, so that a home can finally rise. Before we end, remember this. If you ever win the lottery or face a divorce involving millions, there are 4 rules to survive. First, stay anonymous if possible, and meet with a CPA and an attorney before you go public. Second, form a trust or an LLC to manage taxes and ownership. Third, keep a parenting log, pickups, doctor visits, school activities. In custody battles, that record is worth more than gold. Fourth, preserve metadata, emails, texts, receipts. Digital proof disappears faster than love. Here's a quick comparison. In equitable distribution, states like Illinois, New York, and New Jersey, courts divide assets based on fairness. But in community property states like California, Texas, and Arizona, everything acquired during marriage is split 50-50, no debate. And always remember, this is a story, not legal advice. So let me ask you, if you were Marcus, what would you have done? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more storytelling thrillers about marriage, money, and the choices that define us.